Chairman Adams, you formed a committee with Supervisor Williams and Supervisor Barnes. We met with the county administrator, the deputy county administrator, the GIS director, Ms. Watkins, the registrar who's here tonight, and the economic development director. And just to begin, we've got to comply with the Code of Virginia. And we were supposed to have done this last year, but as you know, the census data was held up. And on December 28th, the Supreme Court of Virginia adopted state and the congressional districts. So we've kind of been following along, waiting on their lead, which we got at the end of last year. That Supreme Court action put us, all of Louisa, in the 5th congressional district. And we also have House District 55 and 59, and we're in Senate Districts 10 and 11 now. And this is just a depiction of the way that line cuts through Louisa. Those House seats, as well as the Senate, are in the same area, the way it's split. And we have to, as the county is redoing the districts, that you have to do your voting districts and also set your lines for your precincts for those districts. And they have to follow what's called census tract boundaries. And that's just the way the United States divides up the geography to count people. So if you've got on the map and the GIS director gets the map with those census tract, we have to keep all of those tracts together. And we also have to be able to describe the districts and the precincts with landmarks or observable boundaries. For example, we can use Camp Creek as a boundary, or Route 15 as a boundary, or Highway 33. And we also obviously have some legal requirements that this has to be compact and contiguous. You can't violate any minorities' rights to vote. They have to have between 100 and 500 registered voters. That's different than the census. The census goes by just numbers, by people, but then when we get to the precinct level, it's based on registered voters. And each precinct must be wholly contained with a single congressional district. And that kind of provided a problem, you'll see when we present the map for Louisa County, because we are stuck with the way the Supreme Court set up those House and Senate seats. And the polling location must be within 1 mile of a precinct boundary. So you could have an actual precinct where people are voting in two different, like a physical location where they're voting in two different precincts, as long as it's within 1 mile of that boundary that it's outside of. And the polling places are supposed to generally be public buildings like schools, for example. And then there's kind of a hierarchy. And, it has to be handicap accessible. So that's kind of what we're working with. And then the numbers, Louisa County grew. We have 37,596 citizens. So if you just divide that by 7, it's an even 5,371 per district. And you can have a deviation of plus or minus 5%. So we could, have 1,260 less and 1,260 more. And the 7 districts, they grew at different rates. The biggest growth was in the Green Springs district at 17.07% growth. The Patrick Henry district grew. We have a few of those districts that they had some decline in population. So that kind of has to be taken into consideration with what was done. And this I will present, and while everybody's here, and this is a proposal staff has developed. You will see that the Green Springs district has shrunk because it grew. In other words, there's going to be a fewer number of people in it. And it kind of sets off a chain reaction, if you would, of a shift across the county. There is, as you can see, the dark blue line is that line that the Supreme Court decided where the House and Senate seats are. So we had to take that into account. This shows it goes through the Patrick Henry district. And so half of Patrick Henry is in one and half in the other. So there would have to be a precinct in that below the blue line and a precinct somewhere in the area above that blue line. And then there's just been a little geographic growth for some of those districts that have declined in population a bit. So that is the prepared remarks, and everybody that was in the committee is here. So I'll open it for questions, and Ms. Watkins is here too.
I'd be happy to make some comments. Mr. Barnes and I served on this committee, and the staff prepared this, and we looked at it, and most people had seen it, and we hadn't heard of any objections, but we've got a couple that we have. So a couple concerns by a couple supervisors. So I think we're planning on going back and re-looking at that, their concerns, seeing if we can address them, and trying to come up with some potential solutions. So I just want to put that out there here tonight. Albeit imperfect, I thought it was a really good first shot at getting it done. And I know Matthias spent a lot of time and effort working on that, so I want to give him some kudos. And one of the biggest issues we had is the boundary has to be describable. So that becomes an issue as you're starting to lay out boundaries. You can describe it by a creek or but not by tax map parcels and things like that. So it's not as easy as you would think. So yeah, that's right. This isn't surveying, Tommy. No, this isn't surveying. We're not going to shoot a line down through it.
Look what happened to our boundary with us and Goochland.
That's a surveying problem right there. The boundary between us and Goochland. But so anyway, this is what they proposed, and really we looked at it, we kicked some tires on it, and we've got a couple small concerns from a couple supervisors. We're going to go back and see if we can see other solutions that are reasonable and meet them, but we would propose that this is what we're looking at.
I agree with Mr. Williams. Staff, it ain't pretty, but it's what staff threw out there. This is my second redistricting, and it, sometimes citizens don't understand how you do it. And go, I want to stay in pattern. You might want to stay where it don't work that way. And, I think staff did a good job to get here. It takes a lot of time to do this. A lot of time. I think Matthias, our GIS coordinator, tell you. And then when you go back and look at it, I think like we're looking at like Yanceyville, where they had been in Mountain Road before. Mm-hmm. Now they're back in Mountain Road. And so it goes back and forth. And I got people tell me all the time, I used to vote there, and now I'm back here. It's unfortunate for some people, but it's where it is. And the way they drew up those congressional districts, put it in real type on.
Mr. Barlow.
Just one comment. When you're going back through this thing, it would really be helpful, and I know Matthias has this ability, to turn the layers on, especially along the boundaries. I mean, the major roads he's got on there, they're easily definable, but a lot of these roads where it cuts back across, you really got to scratch your head to figure out where they are. And if it had just the route numbers on those interior roads, that would be really helpful. And
is that on the interior roads between the proposed districts?
Certainly those, but also, he's got that layer on the GIS.
You're saying turn on in general on the map.
The route numbers, because that certainly helps tell you where your districts go when you're driving down the road.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Mr. Purcell was first.
And
Ms. Jones.
Just real briefly, I just wanted to say thank you to staff in general, but also Matthias Smith worked really hard on this, for the record.
Mrs. Jones.
Yeah. First, I want to thank Matthias. I know that I have spoken to him personally. I have been in Helen's office. We have looked at this, and he has put a lot of time and effort. All the staff has. With that said, I would like for us to maybe work on developing another map to give our constituents just another look, and all of us another look. I am the district that's the biggest district that is pushing the balloon all around.
Yeah, it's your fault.
It's my fault. I get it. But I do think for our constituents that we just take another look at it and just see if there's any other alternatives And
what we did to the last guy.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to maybe possibly be part of just taking another look at that for my constituents.
I have just a little concern in my district. A part of my lower part of the Cuckoo district was taken away, and I really think I need to get that back and maybe concentrate more in the northern part of my district where I have probably more flexibility with numbers because there's more of them there in a small area.
Anybody, Mr.
Yeah, the other thing, I think Ms. Phillips may have noted this, but I just want to emphasize the fact that just for the public that we can't, not only can, you have to be able to define the district, the boundaries using something that's observable, but you also can't subdivide a census block. And that doesn't make so much sense until you start looking at the map, and there's some census blocks that have big chunks of population in them. And so as soon as you move that, then the balloon bulges out somewhere else. And I echo everybody's gratitude to Matthias and to Helen and to the two members on the work group as well who spent a lot of time looking at this. This is also obviously an opportunity for the public to provide input as well. So we're going to be putting this information up online and encouraging public input. Tomorrow. There has to be a public hearing prior to this being adopted. So we'll get this up with that additional detail, and it'll include the census tract, the census block boundaries as well, so that people can see that and how those things move. And then last but certainly not least is the precinct locations themselves. We're going to have some input, certainly by the public and the electoral board with regard to precinct locations. It would make sense to publicize those as well in the adopted ordinance with the new districts. So really welcome input from the public, continued input from the board, do everything we can. It's kind of a zero-sum game. There are 37,596 citizens in the county. And
divide them up.
If you move one, it has to move somewhere else. And so it is a challenge. It's a very interesting puzzle to work on. So I'm really grateful.
It is.
So the registrar is here. Mrs. Watkins, did you have anything you wanted to add or say? I mean, you're here and.
No, just working on it with you all and just making sure that we have voting locations in all the districts.
Which is a big deal too, to make sure you still have a voting location in the district.
Mm-hmm.
Well, would it be a reasonable request that the working group staff meet with any supervisor that has any concerns? I guess half of the working group would have to meet with the supervisor because we can't have more than two, and try to bring back a second version at our next meeting. Well, that's only a week. So the week at the meeting after that.
If we get it done by next meeting.
Yeah, if not,
maybe so.
then the
but
one
as soon
after
as we
that.
can.
Yeah.
We're all interested in getting this done as soon as we can.
Okay.
Mr. Gibbon, would you remind us of the timeline for getting this approved and done? Just for everybody.
December 31st, 2021.
I know.
Just so you understand, there's a primary in June, so it'd be wonderful to do this the second meeting in March, which I don't think we're going to do with public notice. So no later than April, the first meeting in April. Ms. Watkins.
So help her back into her chair. She fell right out of her chair.
So we do have a short time frame. So.
That's right.
Anybody else?
No.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.